guys. Welcome to episode 6 of It's Personal, an Entrepreneur's Podcast with me, Kurt Fadden, Andrew McKelvey, and we have a super special guest today who flew literally halfway around the world from Australia, Dave Clare, who is the CEO and founder of Circle Leadership, which we'll get more into. Dave, we're super happy to have you with us today.
Mate, guys, thank you so much for making time for me to pop into the podcast studio during my trip here, man. I've been watching the episodes and it's awesome. I'm like, can I get on the podcast? Can I get on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I got to tell you, when I met Dave, it was probably, about a year ago now, I think?
March 6th, 7th, 8th.
Right around
last
that,
year,
at Level Up last year. And I was, as I talked about on Cumby's episode, kind of in a vulnerable place. And I walked up to, I believe it was you and Jeff Hoffman, and had a conversation with you guys. And Dave, very, very humble like he is, gave me his card and said, "Hey, give me a call and let's have a Zoom session." And he didn't spend just like an hour with me. He spent, I wouldn't say, we were on the phone for almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And really gave me some advice that quite honestly sent me on a trajectory of being very intentional. I think Andrew can kind of attest to that. And so, I just want to start by saying thank you, because I appreciate the time that you took without getting anything in return, and then even being willing to come on the podcast.
It's actually a privilege. I offer that to a lot of people, and I think you remember, you think, why would you do this? And I offer this all the time, and the only reason I offer it is only because 1% of the people take me up on it, and those 1% are the special people.
Yeah.
And they're the ones I know who are serious. So I'll spend as much time as I need to with people who are serious.
Yeah.
And you showed up, man. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the time that you took. So let's start with a little bit. I know a lot about your background because I've heard you speak before, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your story and your background for our listeners, and kind of the path leading to where you are now. Yeah,
beautiful. I'll try to make a very long story short, because I'm a very old and wise man now these days. Well, I'd like to think I'm wise. I'm definitely old. So I'm actually Canadian born, and I live in Australia now. But for me, my family moved to Australia back when I was about 15 in 1981. So you can do the math and work out how old I am now. Moved to Australia, and then I got into banking and finance. It was an interesting journey for me though, because my dad said, get a job with, a bank or a telco or a government agency, get a good, secure job. Because in his time, he was an entrepreneur of sorts, and he owned a couple of franchises. But through no fault of his own, the two franchisors went bankrupt. So he lost the business and put the family in tremendous, challenging situations. So he wanted to make sure that we didn't go through something like that. And so his recommendation to us as the boys was to do that. So I went into banking and finance for about 13 years, but in Australia, and I was always in leadership roles. So I was blessed with great parenting, and whether it's nurture or nature, I was just really great with people. And so very quickly I got into like a supervisor's role, and then, then actually when one of the people were sick, then I'd jump into the senior role. And then before I know it, I'm the first customer service manager appointed by the bank. And then when they changed the way that they did banking in Australia, and then I took on bigger teams, and I just got into this leadership space. And then I also had a really great mentor, John McGinnis, and I talk about that in my book, Simplified, that he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And then he invested in me in not just bank-type development and training, but personal development and growth and goal setting and how your mind works and basic psychology stuff. And it flourished in that they made me then become a facilitator of that to train other people back in the bank about that stuff. So I got an international accreditation as a facilitator for that organization to facilitate their process to other people. And so I just then having bigger teams. And then when I was leaving the bank, I wanted to get on to an adventure in life. And I was leading a team. There was about 75 people in our team at the time. It started with 10, and in about 2 years' time, we had 75 people that we were looking after in the bank at the time, in the call center I was leading. But then this call for adventure came, and I saw this opportunity then in Papua New Guinea to be a leadership development consultant. It happened to be in banking at the same time, but it was nothing to do with that. It was just, here's my chance to do leadership as a career rather than just as a part of my role of responsibility in the organization. And so I packed my bags up. My wife and my son, Mitchell, he was about 18 months. We went to Papua New Guinea. Never been there before. I could tell people some stories about New Guinea, and happy to share some later. But it was a very developing country. So I was there to work with the expatriates and the national managers of a region within Papua New Guinea. And I was supposed to be there for 3 years. About 14 months later, we decided to leave. My wife then was pregnant with our second child, my daughter Jordan, and we didn't want to raise another child in New Guinea. It was just getting a little bit crazy. So we left, and then we came back to Australia for her to be born. But I had this bug about leadership and being like independent. And so we moved to Canada, back to Canada for me. And when I was there, I'm like, I don't want to get another job. I wanted to really pursue this leadership development. And so I signed up with Leadership Management International, which was then the largest personal and organizational development company in the world at the time. And I got my Canadian license for that organization and then started building my organization there. In Ontario, where I was based back in. And it was really interesting for me because this would have been back in the 1999, 2000.
Okay.
You guys would have been just little kids going to school at that stage.
I was 8, 9.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, I'm a little bit older. But it was really interesting for me because we were doing phenomenal work. And this was back in the days, I don't know if you could remember, but they had boxes and they had the tapes and the cassettes and all this sort of stuff, and you buy the programs. Yeah. And they were great content and stuff, and the process was really great. And they taught me this process for human behavior, which I still use today. And but they used it as a sales gimmick or a technique. And I realized at some stage that's the magic of everything. It's about human behavior and how we become who we are and capable of becoming what we're, the greater heights of success we want in our own lives. And so I just really owned that process. And then I took that and took all the programs and I started chopping and changing them and built these processes and programs for our clients that help them achieve phenomenal results. So as a licensee of that organization, for the 3 years in a row, we had the Canadian Client of the Year. And 2 of those clients went on out of 60 countries to win World Clients of the Year. And so we had, and that was, to me, was the greatest, seeing our clients succeed at that level and getting that recognition. To have no other licensee in the history of LMI ever had 2 World Clients of the Year back to back. And we had 3 in a row. But the funny part of that was, and this is what really set me on the path where I am sort of, let's call it the catalyst for where I am today, is that they were getting upset with me for changing the programs around and playing with the things and then taking the tapes and recording them onto CDs because CDs had just come out and they weren't willing to put them onto CDs and stuff. So I was just burning them myself and mixing the programs up, and I wasn't selling enough boxes in their mind. Well, hang on, you should be selling more boxes. And I said, well, hang on, we're in the personal development, organizational development, the success industry, and you're measuring success on the number of boxes I buy rather than the results we're getting with our clients. And so then I left.
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
I left the organization. And then I decided to develop my own tools and processes and methodologies. And then things were going great. And we had this team of 7. We were doing phenomenal with the business. But then at that stage, my then wife decided to leave me and the kids. And just go on and pursue her own life that she wanted. And so there I'm a single dad with 2 kids, and the global financial crisis hit. So that vulnerable position you were in when we met, I just saw myself sitting there. I didn't tell you that.
Yeah.
But that's what I saw. I didn't have a Dave or a Jeff to sit across from.
You just had to figure it out.
Yeah. So there I am, upside down on my house, upside down on my business, because I actually I bought an office building, renovated an office building, so upside down that. I lost about 70% of my client base because a lot of it was in automotive manufacturing, like tier 1 suppliers.
Went down,
and then Obama reached in and pulled all those plants out of southern Ontario. Just gone through divorce, raising 2 kids. Then I met my wife today, who I have, and who my other son now. He was 14 when he was born into my life, so he's my son, and so we then had to rebuild. But at the same time, I spoke to my dad. So it got to about 2008, 2009. I spoke to my dad in Australia, and he said, "What crisis?" Because in Australia, our banking system is totally different. There was and so he said, "Why don't you come back here? It's like booming." And so we did. So we packed up and moved back to Australia, and got settled in here, and then thought, I might just rebuild my business here. But there was an opportunity actually to roll my sleeves up and get back in the trenches. I've always prided myself on being a practitioner. And so I wanted to prove that I could do it. One of those who can't teach, those who teaches but can't do.
Can't do, yeah.
Yeah, so we got an opportunity to lead a not-for-profit organization, fairly sizable one, and turn it around cool. In 2 years and build the culture and the strategy and doing all that.
Yeah.
Then I had a whole bunch of people asking me in the industry, how did you do that? What did you do? And then I wrote my book, Simplified. This was probably about 2016, 17. And then decided to launch Circle Leadership. I think I launched it really pretty much very beginning of 2017. And never looked back, and took all the lessons that I've learned from all the leaders that I've worked with, all the lessons from my own business, and now realizing that we need to create workplaces that are as amazing as the human beings who are in them. Mm-hmm. And so that's the work that we do now in evolving the world of work and helping organizations to evolve and stay relevant in the hearts and minds of the people they choose to serve, and taking all those life lessons. And one of our core values at Circle Leadership is wisdom, which is learned from experience.
Yeah. And I think thinking back even to at Level Up, I think one of the things that you said to me multiple times was those things that kind of I was ashamed of or didn't love, they were actually assets. If you learn from them and were able to tell other people about them vulnerably and what you took away from them. Yeah. And I think about that almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, I made a living out of that.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I would be remiss not to ask, because it's about being personal on here. What, if any, one or two major events that maybe weren't the most savory events, would you say were the most impactful things on your personal and business life that you think you've gone through? And what advice could you give people from those?
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to come on this podcast, is because it is personal to me. So I'll preface this with understanding that people talk about business to business and business to consumer, B2B, B2C. Mm-hmm. It's all H to H. It's all human. Businesses don't do business with businesses. Mm-hmm. People in business do business with people in business.
Mm-hmm. True.
So it's all personal. And for me, I could look, there's a whole bunch of things that, even when I went through some of those challenges, it was interesting to see who stepped up and who stepped back. Mm. And you could see the people I thought were really good friends and had really great relationships with in business kind of disappeared into the weeds. You ever see that thing with Homer Simpson? He walks back into the bushes. Yeah. There was those people, and then there was some of those that stepped up, mm-hmm. and clients of mine who really backed us all the way and said, we're with you, Dave. We love the work that we're doing, and that was really a significant thing for me, because all the work that we do today with Circle Leadership, it is very personal. I have one of our clients in Melbourne, Australia. And his kids call me Uncle Dave, right? Yes, because we've been, obviously doing work over, Zoom or Teams, and that we're on the video. Yeah. And he's sometimes at home, and his kids, he's like, "Oh, sorry, no, bring them up," and we get to meet their kids, and we get to meet the families, and to me, that's one of the best things, is being part of their lives, because everything that we do at Circle Leadership is human first. And we challenge leaders and organizations to go, hang on, are you looking at this person as a human first, employee second, or are you looking at them as a resource? Yeah. To your business, because we should have resources for humans, not humans as a resource. So everything is personal. So I've learned all this from those relationships and building that. So much so, actually, recently I've been struggling actually with one of our clients. We did some work for a long time, and I helped them through a lot of stuff. Has gone and then started doing some of the stuff that we do now for their own clients, and not involving us in it. And so hey, it's business, do what you want to do. But what hurt most is I thought we had a really great friendship and relationship. And it highlighted for me that, I had blinders on to that person was doing whatever best suited to them. And I know we've talked about this, Kurt, but I talk about ego decisions and soul decisions.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's one of the major things we talked about.
Yeah, and that sometimes, not all ego decisions are bad, but when we're making ego decisions, sometimes it doesn't suit our soul. And the best decisions are soul decisions, but sometimes you need to make some ego decisions to feed your soul. And I understand that. But I try to look at who I considered a friend, and what hurts me most is I think one of my friends, it's not that his business has gone and done this, it's just that a friend. That's the first time I've actually spoken about it, because I've only vented to a couple of people about it, but it's personal.
I suffer from the same thing, though. I think when you put a lot of genuine emotion, time, and effort into anything, whether it's people you work with or serving a client, when something that isn't inherently maybe wrong, but definitely crosses a boundary of relationship that you thought you had. Yeah. I take it pretty personally too. It's something I definitely struggle with, and doesn't mean that always it was even intentional, but it certainly makes you think about how intentional you are about putting time into certain things too.
But you know what? I'm not going to let that spoil any of the other relationships. Because the danger you have, especially in relationships, like if you treat the next relationship based on what happened in the last relationship, you're projecting that onto that relationship, and that's not fair. Like this particular person, I helped them move offices. I helped them because his back was out, and so his team were going to struggle to help move their offices. So I got up there, I've been between meetings. I just pulled in and said, hey, can I help you lift some furniture, move some stuff? We've got some clients where we've helped them through some tough financial times. It's like, don't pay us, but we're here for you. So we've helped them through, and they've responded in kind, and it's beautiful, right? So you sit there and you go, I'm not going to stop doing these things for people because of that
incident. Yeah.
So and I talk about responding in kind, but I do things out of kindness, and this is where for me it's personal. So I'll do things out of kindness, and they go, well, when we want something from that person in return and they don't do it for us, well, that's not fair. Well, no, I don't need that. That's responding in kind. If I do something for you, then you can do something for me.
Yeah.
That's responding in kind. It could be good or bad. But when I respond in kindness, I've already got what I wanted.
Yeah.
I feel great because I was able to help you. Like that. I got so much that you have no idea. The 2.5 hours benefited me equally, if not more possibly, than it may have benefited you. Because it fed my soul so much to know that I could do something for somebody that I didn't have at the time for me.
Yeah.
And so I don't need you to do anything for me because I've already done it. I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
No, I could say, well, hey, Kurt, I spent 2.5 hours on the thing with you. What are you going to do for me now?
Do this back.
Yeah. I need you to do this for me. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can choose to think that way. I just don't.
It's like keeping score.
Yeah. So I have limited expectations on people because I don't do it because I expect something in return. But
Which probably gives you peace to a degree too.
Yeah, but like I say, this particular situation, it wasn't because of what that. It's just like a friend has gone and done what I thought wasn't an appropriate thing. Now, we had a quick chat about it, and for me, it's I'm not going to stop doing the things I do because of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to get hurt when you trust people.
True. Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean you should stop trusting people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true, and a good thing to remember.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So, tell us a little bit more about circle leadership in regards to building it, and like what the core of circle leadership is, and maybe even like what is like the main thing that you would want people to walk away from this knowing about circle leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I started circle leadership is I could see through my own learning and my experiences that I was so focused on growth all the time. And to me, growth is about being more for more. How do I double it? How do I serve more clients, have more, get my stuff out there to more people? And you can grow into obscurity and irrelevance very quickly. And that's what had happened to me twice. And I'm like, oof. In personal growth, I'm just becoming more of who I am, not becoming more of what I'm capable of.
Sure.
And so I thought, well, if you look at what history has taught us and all the larger organizations, that they've all been focused on growth and, like the large companies, but they all probably had their best year the year before they went bankrupt because they weren't evolving. They weren't moving with the times. They weren't positioning themselves. As Canadians, we have this very famous thing that was said by Wayne Gretzky's dad, which is skate to where the puck's going, not where it is. And a lot of people are just skating. They're chasing the puck.
Yeah.
And Wayne Gretzky always went to where he thought the puck,
angled it,
where the puck would end up. So that's why he was always open to have a shot.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you think about that in context of business, so how can we help people do what they're doing today, but be positioning themselves to be ready where the puck is going? And so I wanted to create an organization that was focused on evolution first, growth second. And so Circle Leadership was created for that purpose. It's actually called Circle Leadership, though, because in 2001, I created what I called the Circle of Organizational Leadership. So it's instead of the traditional hierarchical structures in organizations, the typical
pyramid scheme.
What I call ecosystems of an organization, I wanted to create an ecosystem organization. And so we created this, I have the drawing of it. It was LTL Expedited Air. It was 2001. Tim Gleason. We did the very first purpose statement I've ever done for somebody was in 2001. And then we did I drew the circle. He said, well, how do I get my team around this? And so I drew this thing, well, this is how we'll do it. And it's kind of like when Doc Emmett Brown slipped and his head hit the toilet and he got the flux capacitor. Yeah. Right? So I call that my flux capacitor moment, right? And the circle of organizational leadership was born. Yeah. And so everybody answers to something now, not to someone. And we can create all-around leadership, and you can build an organization that lifts everybody up.
Yeah.
And so Circle Leadership is named after the original model of the circle of organizational leadership. But then the methodology is to help organizations create evolution as the natural state of their business so they can have growth spurts on the way. So whereas growth is about being more of what you are, evolution is about becoming more of what you're capable of and then being more of that. So the steady progressive increase of our capabilities and our capacity for greatness expands. And in today's crazy world, this was happening before the pandemic, but now what's everyone trying to do? Trying to increase their capabilities, they're trying to evolve, because the world's changing so fast. Yeah. And so evolution now, you see the word evolution everywhere. And we've been talking about it since 2017. Forever, yeah. And so I wanted to create an organization because I couldn't do it myself, right? So this is an important part. When you think about, I had this vision where I could see a world where work positively impacted people on the planet. Can you imagine a world where people go home feeling great about the work that they do, even though it was a tough day and a bad day? I think workplaces have a lot to answer for right now for a lot of the challenges we have in society. What's the biggest killer in the world today? Lifestyle diseases. Stress, anxiety, depression. You look at all these things, and 50% of our working hours is spent in the workplace, and people are going home, feeling they're being used as a resource. That they're just treated like crap in the workplace, and then they turn to drug and alcohol to escape it all. Thank God it's Friday, and can't wait to get out of work. Imagine if we had people jumping out of bed going, "Thank God it's Monday." Yeah. Because I can't wait to do the work I love with the people I love doing it with for the people I love doing it for, which is what I get to do every day. So I wanted to create an organization, because I can't do it by myself, that could create organizations have that same feeling that I get every day. Yeah. And so we wanted to evolve the world of work. So our organization exists to evolve the world of work. And we do it in a way where we apply simplicity. You've known me for a little while now. Everything that I do, Andrew, is very fundamental. It's simple. Yeah. It's freedom from complexity. We add value by removing things that don't. Get all the gunk out. With wisdom, we use insight, which is to anticipate and act in advance. We're always thinking about our customers, what's going to happen in their world, how will that impact our customers' world, how can we help our customers be prepared for that. We value clarity, which is making sure everyone has a profound understanding about the business. We want people to be able to see the future of the organization so they can see themselves having a future in the organization. Yeah. We want people involved in the work, involved in decisions about the work. We want to delegate outcomes, not tasks to people. We want to free humans up to do the work that humans must do. Can you imagine organizations where all this stuff's happening?
Yeah. I think you nailed it. At least for me, I've been thinking about it even since you said it at the beginning of this. You said having resources for the humans, not having the humans as the resources.
Yeah. Mate, do you want to jump out of bed and go, I can't wait to be an expendable commodity today. I can't wait to be a means to an end. Exactly. I can't wait to make the boss rich today. Yeah. Hey, that's not why people want to jump out of bed in the morning.
No, not at all.
And actually, we're talking to some people here and it's pretty tough to get some people who want to come work here. And I said,
well, what are you doing?
It's not the people. I tell you're not making it a compelling enough reason, making the work more meaningful, and to get them excited and help them see why they should be a part of this organization. Help them have a sense of belonging, right? Here, fundamentally, you want to create a sense of belonging in your organization. Do people want to be there for a long time?
Yeah. And it goes so beyond what you pay people too.
Yeah.
Beyond that.
Pay is always like the fifth or sixth thing on the list of what people want.
What they worry about.
They want a sense of. My book Simplify was written on the fundamental three things, and Chris talked a bit about it. That's where he got it from, right? At the Level Up, his opening thing. Yep. They want three things. They want something to believe in, right? So I want to have a sense of meaning to the work I do. They want someone who believes in them. I want to know that I have a leader or an organization that's going to empower me to make smarter decisions and believes in me. And the last thing they want is someone to believe in. A leader who has a picture of the world that's bigger than all of us combined and something we can't accomplish alone. Yeah. Imagine if we had those three things in an organization. People would drive an hour to go work there.
Just to go work, yeah.
Yeah, and I think of even my experience in why toward the end, obviously, corporate wasn't all bad, but I didn't want to work in corporate anymore. And even my wife's experience in corporate now. And I think it's so difficult when you really think about it, because we are when you say it like that, we are humans and we're all interacting as humans. But I fall victim too as a manager in corporate. We were very quick to write people off because they didn't fit into what we thought that mold was, instead of look at sometimes and say, what is it that we are at? If they're a good individual, we think they're a good worker.
That's right.
But it's not working because they're not like X and X or him or me or then what are we doing to make sure they're in the right place? We would just be like, well, they're not a right fit, and be very quick to move on it. And that's kind of the culture, I would say, in the United States too.
Yep.
Is be quick to fire, which I think is a good thing to have, but I think sometimes we don't really look into why we're being quick to fire, or if there's culpability on our end of it.
Why do we need to fire people? Why can't we just recruit them out?
Yeah.
Right.
And you were talking about that the other night at the mixer. That's a great point to touch on. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you think about this, if we were human first in this, if just because someone doesn't fit or doesn't want to be a part of where we're going as an organization, it does not make them a bad human being. Just because they don't want to share the same vision or build the organization we want to be part of. But if you're not with us, you're out.
Yeah.
We'll fire you, right? But did you recruit those people in? Yes. So you saw something in them while you hired them in, you recruited them in.
You brought them in, yeah.
So why would you not find a way to recruit them out? Which is to help them find what it is. Hey, if it's you guys, if you're not, this isn't part of what you want to be of in the future. Thank you so much for helping us to get to here. How can I help you? Because I care about you as a human being first, an employee second, even if you're leaving. If you want to find out how great an organization is, and I said this the other night, look at how they recruit people out of the organization. What happens when people leave that organization? It's all roses and candies to come in, but when you go get your ass out the door, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Boom, out you go, right?
It's very true.
Yeah, and so what if we looked at recruiting people out? And fundamentally, that concept is saying, if we can't find the right motivation for them to want to be here, and they don't want to be trained and be developed, and they don't want to evolve, that's okay. So recruiting them out is simply this. Hey, while you're here, Andrew, and I'll just pick on you, sorry. Not that your performance is in this space, right? Or is it? Right? Hey, while you're here, if you can maintain this level of performance, here's what I'm going to do for you. We agree that this isn't what you want to do, but to help you, you can take whatever time to go to job interviews. I'll give you a great reference. As long as you maintain this level of performance while you're here until you can find what it is you like.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you. All right? Because what are you going to do if not? You're going to chuck a sick day. You're going to go up whatever, and
you're going to do the quiet quit.
Yeah, do the quiet quitting and stuff like that. So I want to work with you. I want to help you find what it is.
Yeah,
and that gives me time also to find somebody else
to figure my part out.
Yeah, and I said, but if you lie to me and you don't tell me that you're going to interview, or you take a day off just to go to and things like that, you won't get the reference. You won't get that. And we'll have a different conversation. So I want to be human first.
Yeah,
and say second.
Yeah, and then employee second. Right. So as a human, how can I help you? And I've done this before. I've actually, one guy I hired in Australia for one of the companies, it was interesting because he was in retail and he's got young kids, and he didn't get to spend much time. He had to work weekends, retail and all that. And they were like 2 and 4, missing school assemblies, all that really important stuff. Yeah. And I said, his name was David, and I said, David, he was phenomenal. He was a great candidate for the role and that. And I said, here's the deal. I'll give you the job. If you miss one child assembly, if I find out from your wife that you've missed a kid's assembly at school, you've missed anything like that, school trip, you name it, whatever, you will be fired. And he's like, what? I said, you've come here because you want, so we're going to find a way to help create a work situation for you where you can have that flexibility, because that's the reason why you're leaving where you were to come here. If I find out that you've come here and you're not doing the reason why you left here, that'll be a different conversation.
Yeah.
And he's like,
wow.
Nobody's ever. And I said, well, you told me this was important to you.
Yeah. And
I care about you as a human being. And so if you're going to, and I know what it's like to have grown up, my dad was a workaholic, bless his cotton socks, but as a dad, I learned from that, and I want to be present in my kid's life.
Yeah.
So here's another dad, and I'm going, how can I help him make sure he stays in that spot?
Yeah.
So when you're bringing people in and then you're letting people go and freeing up their future, if you want whatever you call it, I call it recruiting them out.
Yeah.
And then the choice becomes theirs whether they want to have that benefit or do they want to be treated like an employee. I'm going to treat you like a human first.
Let you choose.
You choose if you want to be treated like an employee.
The
That's right.
Yeah. And it's kind of when you do it like that, people become more self-aware of whether they're the problem or not too, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? Then I can put my hand on my heart, and this is what I say to leaders, like, you have to be able to put your hand on your heart and go, did I set this person up for success and they're choosing to fail, or have I set them up for failure and they're failing? If I set you up for failure and you're failing, that's on me.
Yeah.
But if I've done everything in my power to set you up for success and you choose to fail in that arena, that's on you.
And I think you have to remember too, like, people inherently don't show up to work wanting to do a bad job, no matter what it is. So there's got to be something, whether it's personal or professional or mixture, causing that person to show up and have the result that they're having. Yeah, it's not by intent, typically.
Yeah. Well, this is a funny thing. Like today in organizations, we get so many leaders go, I wish my people would think for themselves. I wish they would use initiative. I wish they would be accountable. And I go, well, what do you have to do because of that? Well, I have to do all the thinking first. I have to do all this. And I have to, be on them and micromanage them. Da, da, da. And I said, it's your fault. You've created an environment where you've allowed that to happen. Now we're in a world where you need people to think for themselves. You need them to,
and they don't know how.
And they don't know how because you've just spent all these past years telling them what to do, and
thinking for them.
So I grew up in an era where it was like, Dave, you're paid to work, not to think.
Yeah.
And I joke with leaders half-heartedly and say, well, today it's the world is where, Kurt, you're paid to think, and while you're here, if you had to do some work, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we need people to be able to think for themselves, but we've conditioned them so much not to. And the same as those other scenarios, we've conditioned people to think that the organization does not care about me. They're just using me as a means to an end. And so you've got to give people time to come around to this. And this is why it's about evolving, and it's a steady, progressive increase. Because okay, I'm letting you think for yourself. I'm empowering you to make decisions, and you're not doing it now. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, because you just spent the last 10 years telling me not to do this.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden tomorrow you expect me
You
to
want me to change.
Yeah. That's not how it works. It's a process.
Yeah, that's so true. Because even I think about some of the companies I worked at where I was in, management, there were times where when you were in a certain role, they really just wanted you to rank and file. But to get to the next role, they wanted you to think for themselves. And it's really a totally different mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, well, also when people go from one role to the next, they take all the things that they were doing in that role into that next role because they thought, well, this is the stuff that made me successful and why they promoted me.
Yeah.
And so I keep holding on. Now I got to take on this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I got to take on that. And so why are people working longer and harder now?
So trying to do everything.
Because they're still doing what they were doing before and trying to take on the new thing rather than going, well, who do I need to become now to do this role?
Yeah.
Right? This is why you've seen it in sales. You can take the best salesperson and they make the worst sales manager.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because then you end up losing the best salesperson or the thing. Everyone despised that person because they were making more sales anyway.
Yeah.
And now you put them in charge of people.
Yeah.
And then they're still acting like, and they're going and
best.
taking the deals and going, why aren't they just copying me? Why are they not just emulating my...
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So we need to learn to let go of. I call it like, it's kind of like monkey bars. They call monkey bars?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're on the monkey bars. You're holding on to the monkey bars, right? And the only way to get to move on the monkey bars is you have to let go of one to get the other. But you sit there and you're holding on to both, and guess what happens? You just get fatigued, and eventually you can't hold on to it any longer, and you drop.
Yeah.
And this is where stress, anxiety, burnout, depression, all these things start to happen because people don't know what to let go of because they don't know what to grab hold of.
Next.
Yeah.
Right. And so we haven't done a good job of showing people where the next monkey bar, where the thing is so they can actually reach and grab the next one.
Yeah.
And so they're getting fatigued at work.
Just holding. Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually brings me to, so I was getting lunch with a friend of ours in the real estate industry earlier this week. And one of the things we were talking about that their business coach was talking to them and kind of we've been talking to Cumbie about is kind of like when, and even Mike Sanders, the human performance coach, is about, when is it the right time to hit the pause button so you can keep going in that direction instead of having decline in your productivity.
Yeah.
And it's a very hard thing to balance for people who are, entrepreneurs and have that kind of go-getter. Like I always tell people I have trouble closing windows in my brain.
Yep.
I leave a bunch of windows open at all time and I'm just thinking about them. And so, but I think what I've realized is that fatigue that you're talking about, it's the same thing for an entrepreneur in personal life is we try to hold on to everything and do so much of everything. And we confuse activity with accomplishment.
Yes.
And we never hit that pause button. And what I found is when I do that, my performance actually declines.
Yep.
And so when in that regard, what is it that you recommend to people if, what is the correct way to know that balance?
Well, firstly, you need to have your decision-making filters in place so you know that you can actually make smarter decisions about the things you should be working on. I'll talk about that in a second. But a lot of people attract activity as a result rather than the result of the activity. Mm-hmm. And once again, so we're worrying about delegating tasks to people rather than delegating outcomes. And then we're worried about if you can achieve the outcome. I think we talked about this the other night. If you can achieve the outcome that in 6 hours instead of 8, why should I be concerned about that? I should be more worried about how much you punch out rather than when you punch in and out, right, in a business.
True.
But having those decision-making filters in place are critical as part of this process of improving your own productivity. And when I talk about decisions, most people think, it's like, oh, what should I be working on? If you look at the concept of the word decision, and I know both myself and Damien talked about this last year at Level Up, is that when a surgeon does an incision, that is cutting into. A decision is cutting out or cutting off. So when you're making a decision, it's about having us to learn what to say no to, because we should already know what to say yes to. Right? So we help people understand what they should be saying yes to. Otherwise, you're doing all these things, and we're trying to do everything. And you have no way to decide what's going to give us traction and what becomes a distraction.
Yeah, it's really like an editing out almost.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you have all those windows open, you get up your laptop or your computer, you open up all those windows. What happens to your laptop or your computer's performance when you have 40?
It goes down.
Yeah, it slows down. So you have a diminishing rate of productivity. You're actually working less. And even in the workplace, it's like these people are working 10 hours. You know what? And this is why a lot of people are actually more productive sometimes working from home, because they're actually getting more done in less time. Because they're not the distractions
There's like
of
an
the workplace.
incentive to get it done in less time, so you
That's
can
right.
go do whatever.
Absolutely.
You want, yeah.
Yeah, and what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
So my advice to people is, don't confuse activity as a result. Look at the result of the activity and look at ways where you can improve that result with less time and less effort. Productivity is about outputs over inputs, right? So the more outputs I can achieve with less inputs means I'm more productive.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's two ways to get better results, right? Work longer and harder than you ever have, or shift the way you think about things. And that thinking will drive new behaviors, which will get you new results.
Yeah.
Right?
That
So
makes
how many
sense.
people do you know are working longer and harder than they ever have?
Yeah.
Right? So that's part of the process. In organizations, systems are a wonderful thing to improve the way people work. All right? Because James Clear wrote about it in his book, Atomic Habits. He said, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You only fall to the level of your systems. And it's the same thing as us. What's your system? Because your system is to open up a whole bunch of things and be working on 1,000 different things at a different time. That's great. That's the way your mind might work, but it's not the most productive way.
No, and actively forcing ourselves to be focused and are saying this year's keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
Michael Scott from The Office.
Yeah.
And honestly, we've had having very good results doing that. Now, I get tempted because things are going well and there's monotony in that to want to do this, and this, but I have to tell myself, just stay really focused on doing what you're doing well. And when you maximize that, you can expand on it.
Yeah, but what do you, when you're doing really well and you've got time now, what are you supposed to do with that time?
Yeah, and it's not busy myself. It's to have balance.
Right. Well, once you can prioritize rest, and I know the peak performance, was it Mike?
Mike,
yeah. He would tell you that rest is a high payoff activity.
Yeah. He did tell us that, yeah.
What? Because, so rest is, we don't think of that as a productive thing to do. Therefore, when we get this stuff done, we go, how do I fill that time now with something?
Yeah.
And it's what
just
most of
our
us don't know
nature.
is what to fill that time with.
Yeah.
And so if you don't see that as like go for a walk or go have a round of golf or go do something that you enjoy, whatever it might be, it's okay to do that. Lisa in our team, she netball. I don't know if it's like a big thing over here in Australia. It's huge. I don't know why they call it netball. It's a ring with no net, but it's like basketball, but you can't run. All right,
Really?
It's an interesting game.
Anyway, I gotta look that one up.
that one
I'm
after
gonna start a
this.
Panama City net
So it's a big
club.
pole with a big ring around it. It's called netball. There's no net on it, but
Oh,
anyway.
I think I've seen
And
it.
then
Yes,
you can run when you don't have. As soon as you get the ball, you have to stop.
You got to pass it.
And you got to pass
Yeah,
it, or you can
yeah.
shoot, whatever.
Yeah.
Netball.
But during the day, she would go down to the netball courts, and even in the middle of the day, and just shoot hoops, right?
Yeah.
Because it was really good for her to rest, relax. It helped her mind relax.
Clear
Where
head.
do you get your best ideas, mate?
Probably not when I'm working.
In the shower, when you're
wherever,
working.
wherever you find peace.
Not when you're working,
Yeah.
but in your shower, you go for a walk, do whatever else, and these really great ideas because you
Yeah.
give your mind time to think about things. So it's actually rest or doing something, filling that gap with something else is
Yeah.
far more productive
Yeah,
than
that
actually
makes sense.
just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah,
grinding. This
absolutely.
whole grind
Absolutely.
and hustle mentality is crazy.
Go fishing or something.
Yeah, and I fall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You would I learned this a long time ago. When I was back at the bank, I think I would come out of the elevator. I was on the 4th floor, and then where the 75 people were, I would go to the coffee room, grab a coffee for myself and one for somebody else, because I knew everyone's coffee orders. Right, get to know it. And so each day I would pick a different person, and I'd go and I'd drop a coffee on the desk, have a quick chat with them. So every single day I would at least meet one person. I'd say
Somebody.
good morning, and I had like this maze. Then I'd go into my office, which is in the far back corner, and it's like a fishbowl, big glass, and there was a whiteboard. And people used to joke about it because I would just go in there, put my coffee down, and I'd turn the whiteboard, pick up a marker, and I would just stare at the whiteboard. And I would just think.
Yeah.
And just think about what's the best way to make today the best day ever.
Yeah.
And that was my thinking time. And people just it took a while to work out what I was doing, But the team loved it because then I would come up with new ideas, different things we could work on. But having that time to stop and think.
Yeah. To pause.
It was most productive part of my day, actually.
Yeah. Just a few minutes.
I believe that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. This is the last question that we like to ask every single person that comes on the podcast. Whether it's personal, whether it's professional, doesn't matter what arena it is. What is the single piece of advice or legacy piece of advice you would want to give to people that you think is going to be the most impactful for them and help them?
Wow, what a big question. This was legacy piece. Well, that's a good one. Gee, my brain's got like 500 things dropping through.
Which one do I pick?
It's hard to bring it down to one nugget.
If you had a young entrepreneur in front of you and you wanted to give him 45 seconds worth of advice.
Okay, I'll tell you what it is. And this is the reason why I wrote my book, Simplified. I wanted my kids to know, if it just, the 3 copies went to each one of my children, which it did, they got the first 3 copies.
That's cool.
I wanted them to, anything after that, if it sold, I think it sold like a couple of thousand copies now, but I said anything after that would just be a bonus to me. I wanted my kids to know so that they could look back and go, this is what my dad was passionate about. This is the work that he wanted to do, and this is what his life's work was. And that they would go and find their thing. So they could always read, like, they knew that this is the problem Dad was passionate about solving in the world. And I would encourage them to do the same thing. Because a lot of new entrepreneurs, they're trying to start a business when they should be starting up a solution to a problem that they're passionate about fixing in the world. We ask kids today, what do you want to be when you grow up? Instead of what problem do you see in your world that you'd like to solve today?
It's true.
And then how could you do that, right? Because that taps into the creative mind.
Yeah.
But my advice then, my legacy piece, because that's what the book is, that's my legacy piece, that's my life's work. And that I wanted the kids to know that this is what their dad was really passionate about. And if anything ever happened to me, they know that I died doing what I love doing.
Yeah.
And from all the lessons I've learned, it took me a long time. I'm a bit of a slow learner. But by the time I got there, so my advice is to get onto it sooner rather than later, which is why we talked about the soul and what feeds your passion and stuff like that.
100%.
And passion isn't the stuff that you love per se. It's about what are you willing to endure, because passion means to suffer.
Yeah.
So what are you willing to suffer for? Not in a bad way, but your ability to endure to really bring something to this world.
Well, it's guaranteed not to be easy. The things worth having or the things that we're truly called to do are never going to come easy by nature. So you have to be willing to endure something to get it, I think. And that's...
Yeah. Someone told me once that God gives his biggest battles to his toughest warriors. Yeah. Right, and so you have to go through a lot of those battles, and you'll lose some, but you'll win a lot, and to have the impact that you want to have on the world, and don't be afraid to do that. So my kids now know, and that they can pursue what they want because they know that Dad's doing it.
Yeah,
and I want them to look at me and go, "Hey, Dad's doing whatever it takes." And I've had very low moments in the past 7 years with the business, and very high moments, and they've seen that whole journey. Yeah. But they know I've never given up.
Yeah, and you're honest about it too, which is what's most important.
Yeah. And I'll leave this as a wrap up on that, because I've shared the story before with people, but the moral to the story is you never know who's watching. And one day I was sitting there and in tears in my eyes when I first started the business, and just when the kids were a lot younger, and I was going, I should just quit and get a job. What have I done to my family? I should just quit. And, Mitchell was in his bed sleeping there. I was leaning actually up against his bed, and Jordan was in her cot. She was probably 5 months old, 6 months old, and he was probably 2 or 3. And then this whisper in the back of my head said, Dave, what are you teaching your kids if you give up? That when things get tough, it's okay to give up.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst that sent me on the journey. And then when I wrote my book, and I dedicated the book to the kids as well, a bunch of other people, but gave them all the 3 copies so that they know.
That's impactful.
Yeah. So that's what I would challenge people. That would be that's my legacy, and that's what build your legacy. And Circle Leadership is my legacy, and which I didn't name it after me because I didn't want it to be named after me. I didn't want
I wanted it to be about the purpose.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who have their organizations named after them. A lot of leadership people do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, why didn't you just call it Dave Clare Company, whatever? And I said no, because I wanted something that would transcend my time on this earth.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So that'd be my answer.
It's a huge piece of advice. I love that. Yeah. Well, Dave, I honestly, I can't really believe that we're sitting here doing this when I think back to the conversation we had at a table a year ago. Yeah. But it was very cool, and as always, I feel 10 times better than I did this morning before talking to you. And I think that's your blessing and your gift, and I appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Thank you both,
Yes.
Andrew.
Thank you, Dave.
Kurt. Mate, a pleasure to be here. When I saw it and I thought, I'm here, can I please come on here? Just so I could also say, and you may have seen this yourself, Andrew, but from where I saw Kurt last to where I see him today,
oh yeah,
the transformation, mate, kudos to you.
It's been a long, 36 months or so.
You are a role model and the epitome of personal development, and mate,
I appreciate that.
It was just to be here, just to see you again.
Yeah, I appreciate that
awesome.
So much. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
All right.